Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka Mono Bluetron, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. Now, whenever a new set releases, I like to take a quick look at what's come out and see if I can drag any of it kicking and screaming into playability. Unfortunately, as I'm sure you're already well aware, there's not a whole lot to get excited about in Legendary Duelists. In a lot of ways, it's a perfect sequel to Cyberdark Impact. It is a much lower than average power supplementary set with a bunch of musty-ass GX support that's destined to find its way into bargain bins and value cubes in targets worldwide. However, despite the relatively low power level of the new set, we might just be able to take advantage of the new Cyberdark support and mold it into something beautiful: Cyberdark Stun. So here's the list. Now right away you're probably noticing some irregularities, like the fact that there are only 2 of the old Cyberdarks in total. Well, don't worry, as always I'll give you a little history of the archetype, I'll let you in on what I hope the deck can do, and as always I'll give you the card by card. So firstly, for those of you who don't know, Cyberdark is a GX archetype from that magical time when cards weren't just good because they had the name of an archetype in their title. The original Cyberdarks were 3 monsters and 1 fusion, Horn, Edge, Keel, and Dragon respectively, who had mediocre effects and attached a level 3 or lower dragon from your graveyard to them when they entered the battlefield. The equipped monster behaved like Relinquished, preventing battle destruction and gaining them attack, and their boss monster had the same effect, but more attack and no restrictions on the dragon you equipped. All in all, an unremarkable archetype that would be fun to bring to locals in 2006, but certainly not powerful enough to win with consistently. The new cards are helpful, they're dragons, and they search cards from the deck, which means you no longer have to rely on the bricky multiples of the cards you didn't want to play in the first place. You also don't have to jam Masked Dragon into your 40, but they're still not enough to reward turboing out the fusion and playing the deck as intended. They do, however, facilitate an interesting stun strategy. Instead of relying on the high attack and piercing of the Cyberdark monsters, we're going to load up on traps, play Card of Demise, and hope that 2 attacking monsters is enough to bring us home. We're going to equip a Cyberdark with one of our materials, preferably Claw, and take advantage of the massive number of monsters that receive benefits when being sent from the extra deck to the graveyard. The extra is chock full of goodies like Tis to destroy problem cards, Rafflesia to snag a couple of critical cards from our own deck, and Shooting Quasar to equip to our boss monster. Because we need our attacks to go through, we've chosen the best of the 3 old darks, Cyberdark Edge, which can attack directly for half damage. The rest of the deck is draw spells like Demise, battle traps like Quaking, and the currently busted Floodgate Trap Hole to lock our opponent out of their extra monster zone. Our lines are to chip our opponents down, bin Rafflesia and summon a Cyber Darkness, or make our opponent concede out of frustration. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First, we have 3 copies of Cyberdark Cannon. This card draws a card if it's destroyed while equipped. It can discard itself to add a Cyberdark machine from your deck to your hand, and can send 1 monster from the deck to the graveyard if the dude he's equipped to attacks. Next is Cyberdark Claw, the better of the 2. This one returns a Cyberdark from grave to hand if it's destroyed while equipped, discards to add a Cyberdark spell or trap from deck to hand, and most importantly, sends a monster from the extra deck to the graveyard if the equipped monster attacks. This is the card we almost always want equipped. After that is the Big Daddy himself, Cyberdark Edgelord. Next are our spells. 3 copies of Card of Demise and 3 copies of Pot of Duality are right at home in a deck that doesn't exactly special summon. After that is Cyberdark Inferno. We're playing 3 so we can consistently bin our Claw since he does have to have a target to go from hand to graveyard. This card prevents your Cyberdark monsters that are equipped from being destroyed by card effects. Additionally, you can normal summon a second Cyberdark once per turn by returning 1 you control to the hand, so you may see me do something like equip a Cannon, bin a Claw, tag into Edge with a Claw equipped post-combat. Finally, if this card is destroyed, we get a fusion card from our deck to our hand, and speaking of which, here are our Rafflesia targets. 2 copies of Fusion Conscription, which doesn't play nice with Demise, but does allow us to recycle dead edges, and 1 copy of Overload Fusion, which of course makes Cyber Darkness. After that are our one-ofs, Book of Moon, Raigeki, Foolish Burial, and Upstart Goblin. For traps, we're playing 3 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole, 3 copies of Quaking, currently very powerful cards, at least until someone breaks links in a meaningful way, 2 copies of Heavy Storm Duster, a 1-card 2-for-1, why did they print this? 2 copies of Lose One Turn to prevent us from being killed out of nowhere, 4 Solemns, a Compulse in 2017, and a Torrential Tribute. Now the extra deck is actually kind of important for once. We've got 2 Cyberdark Dragons, the old one. This can be revealed for Fusion Conscription and be sent with Claw if we need extra materials for our next card, Cyber Darkness Dragon. 1 Darkness can be gotten out with Overload Fusion. After that we have 3 Tis, which can destroy single cards on the board when we get attacks in, 1 5-headed dragon, just for the spice of 2006, 6, 2 Rafflesia for the Overload Fusion, and hilariously the Conscription as well, 1 Shooting Star Quasar and 1 Shooting Star, it's Summons, 1 Castel and a Dweller for the 4s, and a Shark and a Grand Pulse for the 3s. So with that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against Hero, and you can see that our opponent is all the way in on the Protect the Darklaw strategy. They have a copy of Forbidden Lance, they have Chalices in deck, and what is this? Fossil Dynapachycephalo, huh? Well, we all gotta out-Drident somehow. We've opened quite well. We have a copy of Card of Demise and a Pot of Duality, which are just best friends, and we're going first, which is excellent. We'll start with the Pot of Duality, activating it to get a copy of Solemn Warning, Card of Demise, and Overload Fusion. I take the second Demise, figuring what's better than 1, 2? We don't really have a play, so we have to use it to draw into a Cyberdark Claw, which we will send, then activate the field spell, normal summon this Cyberdark Edge twice, just to style on our opponent a little bit, and pass it back. Our opponent's going to start with a Hero Lives, doing most of the work for us. When they activate Shadow Mist, we will flip up our Solemn Strike, which should send it directly to grave. Our opponent is then going to Desires, draw themselves a Reinforcement of the Army, get a Goblinberg, special summon another Shadow Mist, and go into Castel. I'll Torrential here, but they chain Lance, which is, just really bad news. We lose everything, and they don't lose anything. We'll take 12, they set a Solemn, and pass it back. We draw into one of the better cards in our deck, a Cyberdark Cannon, which gets us an Edge, which immediately gets Solemned, but thankfully we have a Fusion Conscription set, so we'll get that sucker right back and pass it back. We do have to live this turn. I think our opponent plays a little too carefully around this set card. They shuffle our Cyberdark Inferno back into our deck. Joke's on you. The card's terrible. And get an Honesty Neos, then attack in for 12 and 2,000. On our turn, we're able to normal summon this Edge again, which is really good news. We also draw into a Quaking Mirror Force, which is one of the better traps we could find. We'll equip ourselves a copy of Claw, then destroy this set card because I'm a little scared of it with Intis. In main phase 2, we'll activate this copy of Card of Demise and then send a Cannon to grave, set 2. One of the 2 we set is a Floodgate, which will stop this Tribute summoned Honesty Neos. Afterwards, we can just attack for game. Our second match is up against Trickstar, and if there's one thing a slow, grindy deck doesn't want to see, it's a dedicated burn strategy, especially one with a repeatable Mystical Space Typhoon. Our opponent does not get to start, which is excellent news for us, so we will activate this copy of Cannon to get ourselves an Edge, normal summon Edge, equipping the Cannon, set 4, and Card of Demise. Unfortunately, we don't draw into the field spell. I got a little greedy there and had to discard a Book of Moon and a Compulse. They'll start by using Ice Spell's effect, but they arrange the chain 1-2 improperly, so we'll Solemn Strike the Glass Spell, preventing him from going into the Indestructible Crystal Wing or even the Wind Witch Ice Spell. They'll then use Double Summon to normal summon 2 Candinas, get themselves a Light Stage, but that Light Stage and that set card are looking pretty tasty, and I Heavy Dust Storm away a Reincarnation. I take 400 for doing so because of the Candina effects, and Reincarnation in grave is not the best news for me, but better than nothing. We'll start with Regeki, which is great. Unfortunately, they have one copy of Licorica, which means they'll have a little bit of recursion in that extra Candina, and they'll get back this Licorica to prevent us from doing damage to them, but we will still get to bin a card with our copy of Claw. We're going to use Pot of Duality to get ourselves a copy of Cyberdark Inferno and port out the Cyberdark Edge to equip a Claw instead of a Cannon. I figure it's a little more meaningful at this point in the game. Our opponent's going to summon a Lilybell, attack directly, then use the effect. I figure this is a pretty good card to Solemn Strike because I don't want that Licorice back in hand. Now we have kind of free reign, but because our opponent doesn't have any cards, probably Cannon is a little more powerful than Edge right now, especially since we just drew Overload Fusion, the card that I probably would have searched off of Rafflesia otherwise. We're pretty close to summoning a Cyberdarkness Dragon. I think we need 2 more cards in grave, and that can happen a multitude of ways. We'll Solemn Warning the Scandina, and hopefully this should lock it up. We'll attack directly, sending 1 card from Cyberdark Cannon to the graveyard, and next turn I intend to use Cyberdark Inferno to return Cyberdark Edge to hand, banish 5 cards from grave, and summon Cyberdarkness Dragon with a material attached. Unfortunately, when we go to do so, our opponent's going to Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, delaying the inevitable by a whole turn. We draw into a Fusion Conscription, then in main phase 2, after bidding a card off of Cannon, we will use Overload Fusion to get out of Cyberdarkness. We now have an active negate. Then we'll use the Fusion Conscription we got to get an Edge from deck to hand. So things are looking pretty good. Our opponent draws into a Quaking, so good thing that we have a negate active. We're going to start by normal summoning Edge. I'm a little scared of the set card because I know Trickstar is often very tricky. He activates the Quaking Mirror Force, which I will negate. We get in for 400 and attack over this Ice Spell. Our opponent is going to draw for turn. They draw a Light Stage, which is a pretty excellent draw. They normal summon a Candina. I figure I might as well flip it face down and Floodgate Trap Hole. Then they get a Lilybell, special summon it. When it attacks, I will activate Quaking Mirror Force to set it face down too. Then on our turn, we have the direct attack from Edge for the exact lethal 400 points of damage. Our third and final match is up against True Draco Kaiju, and holy guacamole does our opponent have a good card against us. Whew. Eternal Nightmares can turn off our equip spells for the entire game, so we may have to play this one out like Royal Oppression games from old GX era. Maybe if I special summon enough, he'll run out of life points, or something like that. Thankfully, they've bricked. Other than that, they have a copy of Kumungus as well as a trade-in, which doesn't do very much, although this Solemn Warning should prevent us from killing them before they can find some sort of action. We've drawn okay, but unfortunately we are on the draw, so our opponent gets to set 2 and pass it back. We draw into a Cyberdark Inferno, we'll activate the Pot of Duality. We find a cannon, which is pretty excellent. We'll send that cannon to the graveyard to get ourselves a copy of Edge, then normal summon the Edge to equip the cannon, and whoo, there's the Solemn Warning. We'll activate the Cyberdark Inferno, and oh my god, it begins already. Our opponent's at 5,000 life points, and this Fusion Conscription gets us an Edge back, but aside from that, we are in a bit of a pickle. Thankfully, our opponent draws into another brick, and we get another shot at it. Lose a turn is not exactly the card you want to see against the deck that doesn't really special summon at all. They'll, of course, destroy our equipped spell, and we get in for the 800 attack points that I expect we'll have to win the game somehow with. Our opponent activates Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, and hey, lose one turn's okay against that. They'll activate Eternal Nightmares, and we'll Heavy Dust Storm in response. So now we have the ability to play the deck, at the very least. Unfortunately, Interrupted Kaiju Slumber says that the monsters can't change their battle position, so these two are locked in defense for the rest of the game. We're going to normal summon Edge, getting back a cannon, and go to battle phase, attack over his monster for 1,200 points of damage, and suddenly we have lethal. Unfortunately, our opponent finally draws a True Draco. They start by banishing Slumber and using Trade-In. They have 2 extra normal summons now. They're going to use 1 on Knuckle, destroy our set card. We'll Heavy Dust Storm it. In response, I want to talk about this play. I activated Heavy Dust Storm on my own targeted card to see if our opponent would activate the effect of Dynamite Knuckle so I could chain the targeted card, which was Solemn Strike. Unfortunately, they next leveled me and didn't activate it. Afterwards, they'll activate True Draco Heritage to get another Dynamite Knuckle, then attack over our measly monsters, allowing us to send 1 additional card to graveyard and take a whole bunch of damage. I'm kind of at a loss for words of how I'm going to win this game, but I draw into Raigeki. I activate Raigeki, they activate the effect, presumably to get a return. We Solemn Strike, which destroys it, prevents the effect from activating. We Book of Moon, our own Kaiju, so it forgets it can't change its battle position and attack for game. So we're back with the deck. I don't want to chalk that last one up to anything other than the literal stars aligning for us to win, but even the other games felt pretty good. The deck's got 2 things going for it. Access to a value engine and claw activations, getting you onboard advantage by sending Untis, or literal advantage by sending Rafflesia, and a bevy of traps whose time has come. I think there are just enough playable trap cards, Floodgate, 1 good Mirror Force, Heavy Duster, Solemns, and Lose 1 turn, that Stun might just finally be playable without relying on something like Paleo, where the disruption is their linear game plan. There were a few games where something went horribly wrong, and the ratio of Fusion Conscription to Edges might be a little wonky, but honestly, I came out of the first round of playtesting hopeful that I could sleeve this garbage up and annoy the hell out of some people in paper. So that's that. Apologies for the lack of content last week. I was battling my appendix, but modern medicine won again. Thanks, penicillin. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, you can check me out at twitch.tv/monobluetron every Monday and Thursday from 10 to midnight Eastern Standard Time. Links are in the description. Finally, if you have an idea for a certain deck or archetype, let me know in the comment section below, and I will do my best to check it out. Otherwise, I'll see you Sunday.